Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to day number two of the hackathon for Stable Diffusion. I'm super excited to have a friend here today, Nino Höglund, who has an amazing track record as a designer and also a company builder for a very long time now. Most recently founded a company called Steep, which is one of the hidden gems here in the Nordics. Before that, he has also been the chief design officer at iSettle, which is a Nordic unicorn, as well as head of design at PayPal. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so amazing track record, amazing experience, and I have some inside information on what you're building, and I know for a fact that it's awesome. And I'm super happy, excited to be able to host you here today, and have a little bit of a chat and pick your brains on a couple of things, which I think that a lot of our audience will enjoy. It just for reference, I think we have something like 740 people signed up now for the event, so quite a wide audience, which is awesome to see. And hope that you have also got the chance to be able to start building things, the community guys. And yeah, as always, if there's something we can help with, and reach out. But with that, let's refocus on you, Nino. Super happy to have you here.
glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting to hear a little bit about your background story and who are you basically?
Sure. So I'm from Stockholm, Sweden. I'm a designer. Been a designer for the last 25 years. Come from a fairly technical background. I started out on the Amiga back in the early 90s and did a lot of tried to make games and even tried to create some kind of AI natural language model, but I was 14 and stupid, so it didn't really pan out. But I had dreams. But I got into pixel art and then into design and on that kind of route. I come from a family of artists mainly, and my dad owns a small theater company. My brother is a dancer. My mother makes children's books. So I'm the even though I'm a designer, I'm considered the guy who works with computers in my family. Basically, that's that's me. I've been yeah. My professional career is mainly in digital design, but I've dabbled in book design and typeface design and stuff like that.
That's super interesting. I can definitely relate to the guy with the computers and the family. It seems like when you talk to a lot of these guys in this community, I think most people could relate to that. So definitely interesting. But tell us a little bit. How did you get into design? I know that worked at a lot of big companies. How did that all start?
Um, I think I mean it started as I just had a really big interest for the visual and whether that was pixel graphics or in school it was kind of I got to try out graphic design and some of that. I tried to remember how I actually got into it kind of professionally, but I think it's all a blur because it's I worked at it so much on my spare time and I did so many projects on my own, and then I started to get some foots into some doors, and I got into a magazine publisher where I got to scan a lot of images and retouch them in Photoshop. So that was my first kind of way in, and then they had it was 96, I think 97. So I thought, maybe they should have a website. That's a new thing, right? So I started working with that, and then I think from that was where I got into one of the big consultancy companies in Sweden, Icon Media Lab at the time, which was my school basically. I dropped out of school for the scanning pictures job. Smart move. But I was super tired of school, and it didn't really. I didn't really connect with that, so I was eager to learn, and at Icon Media Lab in the late 90s, that was kind of it was in Equalizer. Everyone was at the basically the same level. No one knew how to make websites or anything like that. It hadn't been done before, so we had to figure it out as we went along. And I worked with some really amazing people who had a lot of education, fancy educations, and I worked with some people who had none, and we were kind of, it was an equal playing field, and it was a really creative and fun time. So that was how I got into the whole thing, and that was my school basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there are certain similarities between how you, built the website, built basic websites and worked with design back in when the internet was basically new, as it relates to how people use AI today, because it's basically the Wild West, right? People are
Yeah.
just trying to figure out things and build things. And how did you get into that context? Because you know that you were an early part of iSettle, right? How did that happen?
So I really love new things. Basically, I love new ideas and new sort of movements. So I got, in maybe, I think it was, 2008, I guess, when Apple released SDKs for the iPhone. I was so tired of the web, so I was like, this is where it's heading, and I felt that Amiga connection almost, like we can be a small studio with 3 people and make a game or an app or something, and so I got really excited about that. And we had a lot of stuff to do. It was a lot of customers or clients, and after a couple of years, in late 2009, I think, Jacob, and who's the founder of iSettle and the CPO of the time at the time, Peder, came by our office and pitched iSettle basically, and so we started making some UI and their app basically, and then after a year, they basically absorbed my small company into iSettle, and it became the kind of app and design team basically. So that's how I got started at iSettle, and it was a proper startup. We were just a few people, and we had to do everything basically. So that was the start of it.
And then a couple of years back now, iSettle got acquired by PayPal, right? What was that like? That must have been quite a transition.
Yes, and there was. I worked with iSettle in different shapes and forms for 10 years almost, and I think PayPal came in the last quarter of that time. So we already went through a long journey from a small startup where everyone just pitched in whatever way they could, to this really professional run company with a big team and a big design team at that. I think I had a team of 60 designers and user researchers at the end of that journey. I think what happened was with PayPal was that it was a plunge into the kind of big American corporation culture, working culture, and that didn't really. I stayed for a while. I learned a lot from that. I think I thought at it as a new experience. I met a lot of really smart people, but ultimately it wasn't for me. I think I like building things, and I like smaller contexts, and I'm not a huge fan of politics and navigating that.
Mm-hmm. And now you're back to building again, which takes us to Steep, right? Can you tell us just a little bit, what is Steep?
So Steep is an analytics tool, and this is something of a theme in my career. I think I like to take hard and complex and maybe a bit boring things, and make them accessible, and try to make them as easy to use as possible, and accessible to anyone basically. So data has been this field where we've been collecting data for the last 10 or 20 years, and we have a lot of it now, frankly, and it's easier than ever to accumulate a lot of data in your company and organization, whatever it is. But actually understanding it and getting insights out of it, it's something that you had to really rely on experts for, and I think it doesn't have to be that complicated actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met up with Johan, who was the analytics lead at Spotify, and I settled for a while, and then Kry. And he had a similar idea coming from his perspective. So I got really hooked on that idea that let's make something really accessible and simple out of this that anyone in the organization can use to understand what, where, how are we doing, where are we heading, and just make it like any other workplace tool basically that you're using.
Mm-hmm. And you've been working on this for about a year now, right? How far along are you?
So we started sketching it out late last year, and we hired our first engineer in January, and we released actually we did our public release in early October. So basically 9 months of work. So we decided to launch early and learn from that. So that, I think that's an extremely sort of fun way of doing it, and just build it together with our users, and building the smallest, sort of the thinnest possible slice, so we can actually move fast and just
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are right now. So we're post launch, and just trying to listen to all the feedback, and all the feedback that we get basically.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting, and it brings me to a tangent question, right? And that's like, how do you know a good design is, and how do you make things accessible like that? How do you think about it?
Um, Yeah, so I think good design is a very sort of personal thing, and it's I think it's, I mean, you asked me what I think, and this, I just wanted to have that asterisk at the top of that this is just me. I think everyone has their own view on this, but for me it needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a super clear purpose. I can't work in advertising, for example, because I don't believe in the purpose. I don't believe in a client's desire to sell their stuff. So for me, it needs to have a purpose, and it needs to be something that I can connect with. And the way I approach it is problem solving, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, after 25 years, you're less into kind of, anyone can make a UI that looks good, but it's harder to make something that really is sort of intuitively connects with you, and that you can kind of learn and understand. So I think that's the really hard problem, and for that to work, you have to, I think, invest completely in it. You have to kind of sort of dive into the world that you're designing for, and you have to know the medium. When I'm designing a book, I my first book that I designed was pretty crap, because I didn't know enough about paper and enough about typography, frankly, and color reproduction and stuff. And I've been working it with that through my career, but it was just another level of that. And I think in the same way, when you're working with products of this kind, you have to know your tech. You have to know how this actually fits together and work with the technicians. You have to work together with the users. So kind of, I think design traditionally has been a bit more sort of standing on the sidelines, and kind of telling everyone what to do. And I think the new way of doing, of a great design, I think is much more immersed, and
Mm-hmm.
much more collaborative, frankly. And I think that's where the really good stuff happens, when you do that.
Mm-hmm. You sort of tangentially approach design thinking, right? Like, think about it from a point of view that makes people be able to access and use the things that you're actually building. But like, when you started Steep, for instance, what was the process like? Like, how do you get from doing that first napkin sketch to where you are now? Like, how did that all came together?
So it might sound easy, but basically, I think we just try to put ourselves into the shoes of the users that we envisioned. I think that so the first thing is that you have to kind of define or play around with and workshop, who are we actually targeting with this? What kind of problems are we solving? And why? And so it was a lot of philosophical discussions first, and kind of and what I think what made it easy for us was that we could actually put on the hats of two of the most important kind of users or user types of the product. So Johan is the analyst expert. So and I'm the person in the leadership team, for example, which I have experience of, and someone who did not have an extensive knowledge of data analytics and statistics and all that stuff that Johan has. So for us, it was easy to just take those roles and play those roles and see what would make this dynamic between us kind of spark and look at the tools out there. Of course, a bunch of research. Look at what is not working right now and what tools do we love to use and all that stuff. So first, when we gather all that kind of input and all that inspiration and stuff, then it was pretty easy, I think, to just say, let's solve this problem and let's solve that problem. And of course, that changes over time, but at least it's kind of stick in the ground. Like, this is what we want to solve, and this is what we believe is important, and that changes over time. That's also important to realize that you don't know what you don't know. So small steps and reevaluate. Small steps and reevaluate.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. When I did my first company, we essentially tried to build hardware, so super weird stuff, right? We basically carved it out in cardboard and walked around to our potential users and asked them for feedback, like, how would you interact with this? Like, what would you press? It's kind of a fun exercise, and I think that sort of the gap. It's the gap now is that you can create a lot more nicer looking in just a very using simple tools online, which is super awesome to see. And we're also seeing that sort of through the community, right? But it brings me into the question of AI. Like, what do you think about AI in design? And like, since we're doing Stable Diffusion Hackathon here, any insight into that?
So AI, as I mentioned, I've been kind of interested in this since I was 14, and I think like a lot of people here, I imagine, got a lot of inspiration from sci-fi and all these kind of grand ideas. And then what I realized throughout the years is that a lot of these sort of sci-fi grand visions, when we actually look where they actually land in society, is pretty banal. It's pretty boring, right? So we imagine like these AI friends, and we get support bots or that we get annoyed at, or we imagine sentient beings, but instead we get these kind of Twitter bots and whatnot. So I think that whatever we can imagine and whatever we build, it kind of filters down through actual people and the capitalist society we live in, etc., etc. So I think that's for me, that boils it down to I like the boring. It's what I'm trying to say. I like the kind of the banal, and I think that's also kind of a way of looking at the future, which is kind of, yes, we should look at the big grand things, but also how can we use it now, and what's the kind of how can we make it purposeful? So I look at AI as a tool, as any other tool, and it requires someone who is skilled with the tool, and it requires better tools. It requires that the tools themselves become better. I think right now, and I have to say I'm not an expert in this at all, but I use it I use AI. I use Stable Diffusion, for example, for very boring things like I needed an illustration with a bunch of people, faces, and it's like, yeah, let's not use real faces. Let's get some fake faces in there, so no one will be upset or whatever. And so for me as a designer, that's the kind of stuff that I think I can use it for now. I think it's not the tool is the tools are exciting. They're not good enough for me to use in a much more elaborate way than that. Or I haven't thought about of uses yet. I think they will be become better and better, and but I think it's still tools. So I think we can use it for really cool purposes. But I think it's sometimes it's hard to predict where it's actually going to land. So that's
definitely. Have you had a chance to play around with some of the other tools like DALL-E from OpenAI?
Yeah, and I made me and my kids had a blast doing. I made it create a Hitler as a cute manga girl, and we had a blast. No, but I think it's fun. I think the artists right now are probably the ones who get the most out of this, and I think it's just because I think the artists are first in any new tech and kind of explore it and see where can we take this, how can we take it to the absolute, push it to the limits, and then it's like boring people like me is like, so how can I use this in my day-to-day work? So there's a gap between that, but yeah, I haven't used DALL-E that much, but Stable Diffusion locally on my Mac.
But we're trying to figure out ways where you can interact speech to text, text to context, and then to DALL-E or to Stable Diffusion to subsidize for some of the things you do with Photoshop, for instance, and Canva. But I agree. We haven't really got to that point where it's become mainstream, but it's certainly happening, and it's happening faster and faster. So it's a lot better than last year when we tried doing a cat with. It was Midjourney actually about a year ago. The cat looked terrible, and now you can basically do super crazy things. We have it in Lab. So if you want to try it out, it's under Imagine.
Cool.
So yeah, it works pretty well. It's not as good as Stable Diffusion yet, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, but coming from Photoshop, working all day, every day in Photoshop, I think that a lot of stuff is happening there that is pretty cool from that point of view. Just I think it's more about maybe not creating stuff out of thin air, or I know it's not, but more like I have this image, this base image, and I want to enhance it. I want to make it better in different ways. Let's make this guy over here smile. Let's change this, that. I think that will be and I think for Adobe is working on some things, but it's probably not fast enough. But I think there's going to be a lot of tools like that are going to be pretty standard for designers like me in the future, for sure.
Yeah, and so like if we move into the perspective of the guys that are listening in and girls today, they're really trying to figure out what they should build, right? And what would your best piece of advice when it comes to design and sort of think about problems in this space with AI be from you? Like, what's your perspective on
that? I think probably the thing that has helped me the most, looking back, is trying to always sort of broaden your perspective, so and look in unexpected places for that. I think just getting out of our regular sort of filter bubbles and echo chambers and just circles and dare to venture out of that has helped me a lot, I think, and getting inspiration and getting a new kind of just zoom out and see what are we. I think one thing that I've been doing throughout my career is like I need to remind me sometimes, because I get too kind of involved in this, is like it's just a website, it's just an app, no one's gonna it's not life and death, and I think that perspective has helped me a lot, I think, and made me a better designer. So just go out, into nature, meet new people, go travel to new places, read books, look at art. I think that's just do other things. I think that would be my and learn new things. My advice.
I think that definitely the cross collaboration and pollination between different fields is super interesting. And just resorting back to the point that you made earlier, banal stuff is kind of interesting, right? Because it's where you actually get the delta value from doing interesting things that people actually use. So yeah, certainly. I'm gonna try to get out of my own filter bubble for a little while after this.
Oh, and I think this field is incredibly exciting, and I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. I'm looking forward to some of the tools that I'll be able to use, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, you can find some of the prototypes on our website later and just try it out, see what we came up with. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, Nino, and really appreciate it. I know a lot of the people here in our community also appreciate it. So big thank you to you.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll provide the link to Steep in the chat so people can check it out and try it and see if they need help with the data analytics part of it. And you can probably see some of Nino's design thoughts in there as well. So we'll make sure to share that after the session. But yeah. Thank you so much, and keep on working on those things, guys. We'll make sure we'll start to do our auditing tomorrow to check who's the winner is, and we really want to be dazzled with your ingenuity here. So keep at it. So thank you so much, and get back to work.
Okay, thanks everyone.